After the Civil War and territorial losses, Muscovy begins to move westward. In 1654, taking advantage of the weakening of the Polish-Lithuanian Confederation due to the uprising of the Ukrainian Cossacks, Muscovy started a war. At the end of the war in 1667, Muscovy gained significant territories of modern Belarus and half of Ukraine with Kiev. Tsar Peter the Great, after visiting Europe, realized the backwardness of his country. Peter sought to Europeanize Russia by introducing Western customs, dress, and traditions. He sent young noblemen abroad for training and recruited foreign specialists. Peter the Great created the first regular army in Russia and established a navy. He hired Dutch and English experts to learn how to build modern warships. The Tsar actively encouraged the development of industry, including the construction of factories and manufactories. Russia learned to smelt iron and cast cannons. Peter encouraged trade, created new trade routes, and supported the development of merchants. Peter attempted through centralized efforts to create the capitalist mode of society that had been emerging in the West for centuries. To this end, he also reformed the state administration, dividing the country into provinces and strengthening the central government. As a result of the Nordic War against Sweden for regional leadership, Russia seized a number of territories and gained access to the Baltic Sea. In 1703, Peter the Great founded St. Petersburg and made it his capital. The city was built mainly by serfs, tens of thousands of whom died. Peter officially renamed the Russian kingdom into the Russian Empire in 1721 and became its first emperor. Empress Catherine continued to modernize Russia along Western European lines. Victory in the Russo-Turkish War allowed Russia to annex the southern lands of present-day Ukraine in 1774 and to force the Ottomans to declare the independence of Crimea. In 1783, the peninsula was occupied by the Russians, ostensibly at the will of the Crimean inhabitants. Catherine's troops destroyed the Zaporizhian Sich. This event marked the end of a significant era in Ukrainian history, symbolizing the decline of Cossack autonomy. In 1772, thanks to a conspiracy between Russia, Prussia, and Austria, the Polish Confederation was divided. During the Second and Third Partition of Poland in 1794 and 1795, Russia received almost the entire territory of modern Ukraine and Belarus, and Poland as an independent state ceased to exist. As a result of another Swedish-Russian war in 1809, the territory of modern Finland passed to Russia. And in 1813, Turkey. as a result of another war, ceded the territory of modern Moldavia. Since Napoleon's invasion of Russia in 1812, the Russian army has avoided direct confrontation with the French, suffering heavy defeats at the battles of Austerlitz and Borodino. The French occupied Muscovy, but the Russians did not surrender, and the half-million-strong army suffered losses from lack of supplies, cold, and guerrilla attacks. Napoleon retreated to France, and in 1816 Poland, which had gained independence thanks to Napoleon's troops, was again occupied by the Russians. With the fall of Napoleon, Russia became the most powerful military force in Europe, primarily due to the number of its troops. For several decades, it played the role of the gendarme of Europe. But 19th century is an age of great change. Britain and France stood up for Turkey in 1854. Russia lost the Crimean War. This defeat showed that Russia was technologically and economically behind Western countries. Russia was still a medieval feudal country where the vast majority of the population was serfs. In 1961, serfdom was abolished. Peasants went to the cities. Factories and railroads are being built. By the 1880s, the territories of present-day Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Tatarstan, and part of Afghanistan had been annexed. The Russians had become a threat to British India. By 1900, Russia was one of the 5 largest economies and number 1 in population. But it was still a backward, largely agricultural country with an underdeveloped capitalist economy. The vast majority of the population was poor and illiterate. The cultures of non-Russian peoples within the empire were destroyed, and political activity was brutally persecuted. The Russian Empire was called the prison of nations. Technological backwardness, poverty, and lack of freedoms increasingly led to uprisings within the empire. In 1914, Russia entered World War I, fighting mainly Germany and Austria-Hungary. The Russian army faced arms shortages, supply problems, and huge casualties. Inflation, social inequality, lack of rights and freedoms created a revolutionary situation. In 1917, demonstrations began in Petrograd due to a shortage of bread. Soldiers joined the demonstrations. The protests could not be suppressed by force. The city was captured, and Tsar Nicholas II was forced to give up the crown. In the same year, the Tsar and his family were assassinated. The Bolshevik Revolution took place. The Russian Empire ceased to exist,